Hello friends, welcome once again to my channel JD's Guidance. Today what I'm going to talk about is a very popular topic of banking, that is the capital adequacy ratio. So in this video I'm going to explain you the concept of capital adequacy ratio in a very simple manner, and whatever technical terms and concepts emerge out of it, I'm going to make separate videos on that on them. Okay, so let us begin. Let us understand what is capital adequacy ratio. Now when I say it's a ratio, capital adequacy ratio, and we know ratio is a variable expressed in relation to another variable. So in short, we have a numerator and a denominator. So here also we have a numerator and a denominator, and it will convey some meaning and convey some message. Now that is why it is called a ratio. We will understand what are those variables in the numerator, what are the variables in the denominator, and what is the meaning that value gives to us. But before that, I am telling you that in case of a bank you know is a systemically important financial institution, because bank happens to be the backbone of any economy, and it is the core financial institution of any kinds of economy, and therefore we want to see, or we were interested to ensure that these banks remain sustainable, this bank remain healthy. Now if there is capital, you know, any business has a capital. Similarly, the case of banks also, bank has a capital. If this capital is sufficient, if this capital is adequate, then it will mean that the bank can absorb, or bank can sustain any kind of crisis which may emerge from time to time, right? So I repeat again what I said, that in any case, any business, and the same case in case of bank also, if there is adequate amount of capital, then it act as a cushion, it act as a defense in times of crisis, in times of emergencies. And therefore there is a thrust, there is an emphasis, there is a focus that the banks are adequately capitalized. The banks are adequately capitalized. They have sufficient capital at their base, so that when some emergency occurs or any kind of financial shock take place and happens in course of time, then the bank is able to withstand that crisis, withstand that shock comfortably. And that is why we need to ensure that these banks have adequate amount of capital, and that is why we are calling it as capital adequacy ratio. I have not come to what is that ratio, but I just explain you what is capital adequacy. Means the banks must ensure that at any point of time there is adequate capital, adequate in the sense that it is able to withstand any kind of crisis or shock it experiences in time to come. Now what is that amount of capital that will be sufficient or that will be adequate? For that we have a ratio, and we call it capital adequacy ratio. I'm not going to tell you right now the history, how it has come up, okay, and I'm just explaining you about the ratio only. Now let us see what is this capital adequacy ratio. I explained you the part capital adequacy. Now I'm coming to the second part, that is ratio. Now what is this ratio? This ratio is, in the numerator we have capital, okay, and in the denominator we have something called risk weighted assets. I repeat again, the capital adequacy ratio, CAR, is nothing but it is the ratio of capital to risk weighted assets, okay. Now on the numerator we have capital, and in the denominator we have risk weighted assets. We have to understand what is this risk weighted assets. Now you know, asset in the balance sheet we have two sides, one is liability, the other is asset. Now let's draw our attention to the asset side. Now in the assets we have different types of assets, right? We have loans given to individuals, to the corporate borrowers, okay. We have some investments that you have made in some securities of company. We have made some investments in government securities. So this way we have a lot, I mean there are a long list of assets in the bank's asset side of the balance sheet. Now remember, each of these items of asset carry some degree of risk, right? Suppose the bank has given loan to some individual, there is some kind of risk that he may not return. If the bank has made some investment in the security, there are chances, or there are cases when the bank may not get the proper return, okay, due to market fluctuations or whatever. So there are risks involved, okay, for each category of assets. For example, if I have invested in corporate security, I have some kind of risk, because if something happens in the market and my investments in the securities may bring me some or make me incur some loss. Similarly, if I have invested in government securities, I would say that I am safer, because government securities are safe form of investments. So what I want to say is that each category or each type of assets in the balance sheet carry some kind of risk, and therefore we have to attach an appropriate risk weight. We will give a weightage to each type of these assets. For example, if it is a government security, it will have a lesser risk weight. If it is a corporate security, it will have relatively higher risk weightage, right? So I will multiply that amount of investments in government security with the corresponding risk weightage. Okay, similarly, I will multiply the amount of investments in corporate securities with some appropriate weightage, and then I will get the risk weighted assets, right? So I get the risk weighted assets. So now I have explained you the denominator. So I repeat again, capital adequacy ratio is something divided by something. What is that something in the numerator? It is the capital, and what is there in the denominator is the risk weighted assets. What is risk weighted asset? Means the assets of the bank carry some type of risk. Each category of asset carry some or the other degree of risk. So I am trying to take a weighted, I'm trying to find out the weighted value, means the value multiplied by the appropriate weight, I get the risk weighted assets, right? Now if I have a greater risk weighted asset, I have to have a greater amount of capital. Why? Because I have made my investments in a very risky kind of avenues, right? My investments are very risky. Okay, I have given all my loans to the corporates where there are chances of risk. I have given all my loans to some such channels or some such avenues of investments which carry a high degree of risk. So if my risk weighted asset is more, so correspondingly I have to keep more capital as a buffer. I have to keep more capital in order to ensure my safety, so that if anything happens and I really face this loss, my capital buffer or my capital is adequate to absorb that loss, right? So now we know what is there in the numerator and what is there in the denominator. I am saying numerator is the amount of capital and denominator is the risk weighted asset. So the greater the risk weighted asset, more capital I have to keep aside, right? So capital in relation to risk weighted assets, right? So capital in relation to risk weighted assets. So when I compute, I get a figure. Okay, I get a figure, maybe I get 8%, I get 9% if I multiply by 100. I repeat again, capital adequacy ratio is capital divided by risk weighted asset. So when I divide the capital with the risk weighted asset, I get a value maybe 8%, 9%. So it says that for every unit 100 rupees in investments in the risk weighted assets, I have 8 rupees as capital. Okay, 8 divided by 100 means 100 rupees of risk weighted assets is having a capital. I have 8 rupees capital for 100 risk weighted assets. Okay, now I'm telling you that I again want to repeat that if I have a greater risk weighted asset, I have to have a greater amount of capital. It is quite obvious that more risky my asset composition is, the greater would be the requirement of capital in order to ensure safety. So this is the concept of capital adequacy ratio. Now where from this concept has emerged, where from we have come to know about something called capital adequacy ratio. Now I have to take you back to some history. And this history is very important for any kinds of exams relating to banking, and for your banking knowledge you have to know this concept. Now there is a committee, we call it Basel Committee. Okay, Basel Committee, which has recommended this amount of capital adequacy ratio. What should be that ratio? Okay, this concept has come out of that committee. Now let me take you back. There is a place in Switzerland. Please try to understand in like a series of events, then you will know capital adequacy in a greater details. Let's go to the series of events that have taken place in the history. Now there is a place in Switzerland, we call it, the name is Basel. Basel is a place in Switzerland, city in Switzerland. In the Basel, one committee was formed, that is an international forum. We call it BCBS. You may be asked what is the full form of BCBS when it comes to Basel Accord. So it is Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. I repeat again, it is the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, BCBS. It is an international forum where we have representations from many countries. And when it was formed in 1974, there were the governors of 10 different central banks, okay, central banks of the country who had represented their respective countries in the forum. Now, why this forum was created? Why this BCBS, Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, was created? It was created in order to ensure sound health of financial system, more particularly banking institutions. It wanted to ensure good health of banking institutions, and it also wanted to ensure the quality of banking supervision. You know, we have Reserve Bank of India, which is the apex bank, which oversees the functioning of other commercial banks, which supervises the functioning of other commercial banks. So this committee was formed in order to ensure a kind of quality of supervision. Okay, it wanted to ensure a quality of supervision and also the appropriate know-how. Okay, how they have to do the supervision. Okay, and appropriate know-how, in order to ensure appropriate know-how. So you understand why was this committee formed? This committee was formed in order to ensure a very good health of financial system, more particularly the banking system, and it wanted to ensure that there is a good quality of supervision and the supervisory know-how is there with every country. Because we cannot deny that banks are crucial for any economy, no matter at what stage of development that economy is. Okay, so let's proceed. So when was this committee constituted? This was constituted in the year 1974, a very old committee. Okay, and there they had come up with this particular norm known as capital adequacy ratio, because our monetary authority like Reserve Bank of India has to see that the banks have a good health. Now, what should be the parameter to know whether the bank has a good wealth or health or not, and to what extent they can be sure that bank can meet any kind of crisis or contingencies in time to come? For that, the Basel has given one parameter, and that we call as capital adequacy ratio. So the Basel, as I told you, the Basel is nothing. The name Basel, we tend to think, what is this Basel? What is the meaning of Basel? Meaning of Basel, I think there is no such meaning. Rather, it is the name of the city where this committee was formed and had the meeting for the first time in 1974. Right? So it had recommended the minimum capital adequacy ratio. So for the Basel norms for capital adequacy ratio, which came for the first time in the year 1988. Okay, so remember, Basel norms are for globally for all the countries, and to adopt these norms are not mandatory. Okay, they are to be voluntarily adopted by the countries. So these are not mandatory, but they are to be adopted voluntarily by the countries. Right. So in the year 1988, it had come with its first norm of capital adequacy ratio, and the prescribed norm was 4 to 8%. So now you understand, 4 to 8% of what? Capital to risk weighted asset. And when did the first Basel I norms came up? It came in the year 1988. But remember, there is always a time period which is required for all the countries to adopt. So it was introduced in India in the year 1992. For India, we took some time to introduce it. So it was introduced in the year 1992. And how much was the Basel norm which was recommended by the committee? It was 4 to 8% of capital to risk weighted assets. Okay, the ratio of capital to risk weighted assets. Right. Now there were some shortcomings with this first Basel I norms, right? So there were some shortcomings for which another set of norms had come up, and earlier in the Basel I it had recommended just the minimum capital adequacy ratio, but in the Basel II guideline it had other features also. I mean, it had other regulations and other norms, not regulation, there were other norms also. But in this video I'm not going to cover in detail the Basel 1 and 2 and 3, because there are in total the 3 sets of regulations, and in total we call it Basel Accord. So for this there is a separate video where we will where I have given talk on Basel 1, Basel 2 and Basel 3. But here my concern is to just make you aware about what is capital adequacy ratio, and in this connection I have told this particular concept was introduced by BCBS, that is Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. This is a committee which was set up in the year 1974, and in the year 1988 it had come up with its first capital adequacy norm. We call it minimum capital adequacy norm, that was 4 to 8%, and for India it was adopted in the year 1992. But there were some problems, or there were some constraints or limitations in Basel 1 for which another set of norms had come, and that is Basel 2. Now when did it come? It came in the year 1999, right? But it was I mean, the final directions came in the year 2003, right? So in 1999 it was introduced, but it took some time to get the final directions, so it continued to 2003, and finally it was introduced in the year 2006 globally. But for India we took some time, and it was introduced in the year 2009. Now, so remember, for Basel II it got introduced in the year 2009 in India. Now what was the norms? So earlier it was 4 to 8%, means your capital to risk weighted assets should be 4 to 8%. So now it got bit stricter. I mean, there was some strict norm now, that is not 4 to 8%, but it was extended to 8 to 12%, right? So globally there was a range that it has to be between 8 to 12%. 12% was the ultimate targeted capital to risk weighted ratio, because this has to be attained in a phased manner, not all on a sudden, but it has to be attained by the banks in a phased manner. But for India, the Basel II guidelines or norms was introduced by RBI in the year 2009. Okay, and for India, the Reserve Bank of India has modified the norm, and for India it was 9%. So globally it was 8 to 12%. So for India it was 9%. So now, what was the problem I did not mention? The Basel 1 was recommending a capital to risk weighted asset ratio of 4 to 8%. Basel 2 had revised this, and it had increased the norms, the minimum capital adequacy ratio, from, what did I say, 8 to 12%. And for India it was set at 9%. Now you have to pay a little more attention to understand few more concepts. Now when I say capital to risk weighted asset ratio, capital to risk weighted asset ratio, this is our formula for CAR, capital adequacy ratio. You know, in a bank there are two types of capital, and for any business also, you know, there are two types of capital. One is the owner's capital and the other one is the borrowed capital. So there are two types of capital. One is the owner's capital, okay, which the owner of the business infuse, and one is the borrowed, which the businessman, or in case of a bank, it acquires from or it borrows from the market, right? So in case of bank also, there are some which are owner's capital and some which are borrowed capital. So we have capital adequacy norms mentioned in the previous guideline, that is for Basel 1. So it was 4 to 8%, but it did not mention 4 to 8% of which capital. Should it be the owner's capital or should it be the borrowed capital? So here in Basel II, a demarcation was created, and they had differentiated or distinguished these two categories of capital as tier 1 capital and tier 2 capital. Please try to understand, because capital comes to a bank from two different sources. One is the owner's, or we call it equity capital, okay, and the other one is from the borrowed source. right? So in case of capital adequacy ratio, it was not mentioned that capital should be which one, should it be the owner's one or should it be the borrowed one. So it demarcated the capital into two parts, tier 1 capital and tier 2 capital. Now let's understand what is this tier 1 capital. Tier 1 capital is the core capital of the bank. This is the core and the basic and the very very vital component of the capital of a bank, right? So what constitutes this core capital? This is nothing but this is the equity capital. Okay, it is the equity capital plus the retained earnings. Okay, we call it the retained earnings. Equity capital and the retained earnings constitute the tier 1 capital, whereas the tier 2 consists of something which is different from this. We will come to it what does tier 2 comprises of, but let me distinguish tier 1 and tier 2 capital. One distinction I've already told you, these are the owners or the core capital of the bank, whereas the tier 2 is not the core capital but this is the subordinated capital or also known as supplementary capital. Okay, tier 1 is the core capital, tier 2 is the supplementary or subordinated capital. Now let's understand what is tier 2 capital or what is the supplementary capital. Now tier 1 I said it is the core capital, whereas tier 2 is the supplementary capital. Core capital means this is that amount of capital if the bank has this capital in adequate amount. If this amount of capital is adequate, I am talking about tier 1. If this amount of capital is adequate, then the bank will continue its operation without the need to go into liquidation. Means the bank will not go into liquidation if this capital is adequate. Okay, it will not require to cease its business. Okay, its business will continue to exist if this capital is adequate, right? The bank will not come into a state of liquidation if this amount of capital is adequate, right? But the supplementary capital is that capital which will help the business when it has gone into a state of liquidation, right? I distinguish tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 capital is that capital which is core capital, and if this amount of capital is adequately available in the bank, then the bank will not face the problem. It will help the bank not to face the problem of liquidation and its business will not cease to exist. Okay, whereas the supplementary capital is the secondary layer of capital. Okay, it is the second layer of the capital which will help the business at the time of liquidation, right? So suppose you have a problem in your own personal life, you will first take out your own savings, okay, own money. Even if with your own money you are not able to withstand the crisis, then you will take the money on loan or you will borrow the money. You will use the money which you have borrowed. So same case here, you will continue with your owner's fund to operate. I mean the business will be protected if it has owner's fund. Okay, it will not go into liquidation. But in case the company goes into liquidation, then the tier 2 capital will come to action, right? Now let us understand what are the components of tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 capital consists of, as I already told you, equity capital and the retained earnings. Okay, but tier 2 consists of certain categories of capital. Let us understand what are they. Number 1, you should remember undisclosed reserves. Number 2, revaluation reserves. Number 3, loan loss reserves or provision. Loan loss reserves or provision. Number 4, hybrid instruments. And number 5, subordinated debts. So I have named a variety of capital which comes within the tier 2. Let me repeat again what I said. Number 1 I said is the undisclosed reserves. Number 2 I said is revaluation reserve. Number 3 I said loan loss provision. Number 4 I said hybrid instruments. Number 5 I said subordinated debts. These are the components of tier 2. Okay, I have a separate video where I have specifically explained each of these items of tier 2 capital. Okay, so now I have tier 1 and I have tier 2 details. So a bank tier 1 is the core, which is very important, and tier 2 capital is something which is supplementary, which is the second layer of the bank's capital. Now in Basel 1, when it had recommended 4 to 8%, it did not mention 4 to 8% of which capital, tier 1 or tier 2 capital. In the second Basel recommendation, committee recommendation, it had divided the capital into tier 1 and tier 2, and as I said that in the second accord we have 8 to 12% norms, and for India it is 9%. Now in the Basel recommendation, it was recommended that bank should try to increase its tier 1 capital and reduce the tier 2 capital. I should have more my money to help me at the time of crisis rather than others' money or borrowed money. So same is the concept here. In Basel 2, it was focused that bank should have more of its own capital. So there should be more of tier 1 capital in relation to tier 2 capital. So how much was India's Basel norms? If you remember, I told you it was 9%. As per the second Basel recommendation, it was for India it was 9%. India had gone for a 9% capital adequacy ratio norm. Now we know what is tier 1 and tier 2. Now it was recommended that Indian banks should reduce tier 2 and have more of tier 1. So 7% should be tier 1 and 2% should be tier 2. So 7 plus 2 comes to be 9. So that is how the 9% capital adequacy ratio was bifurcated into tier 1 and tier 2. 7% of tier 1 capital and 2% of tier 2 capital. So now you know that if you are being asked what is capital adequacy ratio, you will be able to answer capital adequacy ratio is the capital to risk weighted assets. Now you know what is risk weighted assets. Each assets of the bank carry a certain magnitude or degree of risk. So we take the weightage and multiply with the amount of that asset and we get the risk weighted asset. And what is capital? Capital has got two parts, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is the core capital which will help the business to run. It will help the business not to go into liquidation, and tier 2 is the secondary level or the secondary capital or the supplementary capital, which comprises of those sources which are not the owner's sources. These are the sources which comes from other sources, not the core capital, right? So this core capital, the secondary layer, will help the bank at the time of its liquidation. Okay. Now comes what is the Basel norm? The Basel norm of 9% which had come in the second guideline, and this 9% is split into 7 plus 2, 7 for tier 1 and 2 for tier 2. Okay, this was about the numerator, the capital. But something happened with the denominator also, risk weighted assets. Now in Basel 1, which had come in which year? If you remember, it had come in the year 1988 and in India it was 1992. But you know, when we talk about risk, there are different categories of risk. So in Basel 1, they had mentioned about the credit risk only. They have considered only credit risk. Okay, they recommended 4 to 8%, and at the time of recommendation, they had considered only the credit risk. Okay, now what is credit risk? Credit risk means when the bank is giving loan to a person, credit to the person, there are chances that the money will not come back. It will turn out to be NPA. So that risk associated with lending is known as credit risk. So Basel 1 had considered only the credit risk. Then it was amended in the subsequent time and they incorporated the market risk also. Okay, so when there are banks which are dealing in market, I mean they are purchasing securities, okay, they have investments in the securities, so they are also subject to market fluctuations of interest rate, exchange rate fluctuations, etc. So as a result of which there is also some risk. Okay, this is called market risk which arise from sources like interest rate changes, exchange rates changes. Okay, the risk which arise from trading in derivatives and forward contracts, okay, and options. So these are the risks which are associated for banks' investments in those category of securities. So these are also the rate of change in the interest rate is also a market risk. So Basel 1 had taken credit risk and with its subsequent amendment had also considered market risk. But in the Basel 2 it had introduced another type of risk which is known as operational risk. This is the risk which is associated with the faulty operations, processes, etc. Maybe you are making wrong recording in the business. Internally there is wrong processing. So for this there are some risks which is involved in the business of a bank. So that is called operational risk. The risk which arise in the day-to-day functioning of the bank due to wrong processing, wrong operations, due to the wrong treatment of some items. So this comes under the operational risk. So what we have seen that Basel I had considered only the credit risk, and subsequently it had through its amendment considered the market risk. But Basel II had introduced another type of risk known as the operational risk. Now what are the different risks the bank faces? You know now: credit risk, market risk, and operational risk. Credit risk arises out of its lending activities. Market risk arises due to the market ups and downs, market fluctuations, and this is more for the banks which have more participation in the securities market. And the last one is the operational risk, which arises in the day-to-day functioning of the business. Okay, so this is about the Basel II. Basel II had brought about the minimum capital requirement, but along with this there were other two things which were also brought. We call it the three pillars of Basel II. So very often they may ask you, what are the three pillars which was recommended under Basel II? You have to say the first pillar is the minimum capital requirement. As I told you, what was the minimum capital requirement? It was 8 to 12%. Okay, this is the first pillar. The second pillar was supervisory review process and internal assessment. So it wanted the central bank of the country, like Reserve Bank of India, to have a proper supervision about the capital adequacy and other by way of capital adequacy. So supervisory review process and internal assessment is required as a second pillar. I will not cover this here in details. I have my videos separately for Basel I and II and Basel III. There it is dealt in details. So, and the third period was market discipline. Market discipline means the banks are required to make the disclosure of their exposures. Okay, the bank should be disclosing all its risk exposure. That comes under market discipline. So this is just for information that Basel II had come with three pillars. The first pillar was the minimum capital requirement. The second pillar was the supervisory review process and internal assessment, and the third one was the market discipline. Okay, so we are done with Basel I and Basel II. We have seen what is capital adequacy ratio, and we have seen how it has changed over Basel I to Basel II, and we have also seen what are the three pillars as recommended under Basel II. Now move on to Basel III. Basel III had come as a response to the global financial crisis which all the countries almost have experienced in the 2008. Now because of this global financial crisis, the regulators as well as the BCBS, Basel's Committee on Banking Supervision, they had their concern that the banks are indulged into some risky activities. Therefore, there is a need to come up with a third norm that is known as Basel III. So, three sets of regulations have come from BCBS, Basel I, Basel II and Basel III, and all these three together is known as Basel Accord. Okay, what is Basel Accord? These are the three sets of regulations which had come over the time, that is called Basel Accord. Now, when did Basel III come? It had come in the year 2010, but it took some more time to get the final directions. So you can take it as 2013 it got introduced, and in India there was a plan to introduce, or not introduce, to get it implemented by 2019. Okay, so what was the norms which was set? It was 10 to 14%. So just see the transition, 4 to 8%, then was 8 to 12%, and then is the 10 to 14%. And for India, it was set as 11.5%. Right? Now there is something which has come in the Basel III. What is that something in Basel III? In Basel III, they had talked about something called capital conservation ratio. Okay, CCR. Capital conservation ratio. Now this 11.5% is, I'm telling you what it is. In Basel II, we had how much for India? It was 9% if you remember. Actually, it had kept 9% only in Basel III. But why am I saying 11.5? What is the difference between 11.5 and 9? It is 2.5. So it is saying that 9% you have to maintain, but another 2.5% you have to maintain of tier 1 capital. You have to maintain another 2.5% of tier 1 capital. Why? There is a thrust that there should be more proportion of tier 1 capital. So you can split it up. The total capital adequacy ratio is 9%, but there should be additional 2.5% of tier 1 capital. So altogether it comes to be 11.5%. Okay. So this is about Basel 1, Basel 2 and Basel 3. I hope it is clear. But at the end I want to tell you one more thing which the Basel 3 has recommended. Okay. So in Basel 3 they have come up with a term for some banks. They call it as too big to fail. Okay, too big to fail. So there are some categories of banks which are known as the too big to fail banks. They are also known as domestically systematically important bank or domestic systematically important bank. Okay, DSIB. I repeat again, Basel 3 had come up with one more norm which is known as the domestically systematically important bank, or some people call it domestic systematically important bank, D:SIB. Now what is the DSIB? DSIB are those banks which are too big to fail. There are some banks which have got a very big volume of operation. They account for a higher asset base. Okay, if they contribute around 2% of the country's GDP. Their asset constitutes 2% of country's GDP. In case of India, we can say these are those banks which are systematically important, and if these banks fail or collapse, the economy is sure to take a turn down, or the economy is sure to shake and collapse. Right? These are those banks which are too big to fail, but these are those banks, if they fail, then it is going to shake the economy, it is going to collapse the economy. Now, they have classified the banks into some buckets. Bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3 and bucket 4. Okay. Now, let us understand what it is all about. It is about like those banks which are very big in size. They have a very big operation, size of business. And these are those banks which are very important because their asset constitute 2% of the country's GDP. Now, if this big bank fails, it will be a big chaos to the economy, and therefore their health is to be protected. And therefore, these banks are required to maintain some additional capital. So, I told you 11.5%, but if you are domestically, systematically important bank, then you have to maintain another additional capital, some more additional capital. Now, let's understand how much more. Achha, why these banks are required to maintain more? They are systematically important, fine, and they are too big to fail, fine. They are supposed to maintain more because if they fail, then the entire economy will be collapsed. And one more thing, these are those banks, if they fail, then the government has to give, if their financial health deteriorates, then the government has to infuse capital. Okay, government has to infuse capital in order to ensure their good health, or in order to sustain their operation, okay, or in order to revive their operation at the time of crisis. And therefore, the regulators want these banks to maintain additional buffer, additional capital. Okay, now how much additional will depend on in which bucket this bank is. So there is bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3, bucket 4, bucket 5. Okay, now bucket 1 will have a capital adequacy, additional capital requirement of 2%. Bucket this is bucket 1, I am saying it will have an additional capital requirement of 2% in addition to 11.5. okay, it will be 2% if you are in bucket 2, bucket 1. If you are in bucket 2, you have to maintain say 4%. So this way it will go ahead. Now let us understand in India which are those banks which are domestically systematically important banks. In India, there are 3 banks which are recognized in this category. The first bank is the ICICI and HDFC, which are in bucket 1, and State Bank of India, which is in bucket 3. Okay, so ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank is in bucket 1 and State Bank of India is in bucket 3. So as you progress in the buckets 1, 2, 3, 4, you have to maintain additional capital. So this is about the domestically systematically important banks. We call it DSIB. But the Basel III has also talked about another concept that is known as globally systematically important bank. These are those banks which are having a global presence. They have a very big business globally, and if these banks fail, okay, then the entire economy is supposed to suffer, as it happens in case of Lehman Brothers. So these are known as globally systematically important banks. Right, there is a long list of banks which fall under this category, and the list which I have seen, I didn't see any Indian banks in that category. So this is all about the concept of capital adequacy ratio. It went in a bit detailed way. I explained you what is capital adequacy ratio. It is capital to risk weighted assets. What is capital? Tier 1 capital, tier 2 capital. What is tier 1 capital? The core capital, which is very necessary for banks, and the bank should have more amount of tier 1 capital. What is tier 2 capital? These are the supplementary capital which help the banks when the bank is in the liquidation. What is risk weighted assets? You know, risk into the volume of assets. Now what is that risk? You know, it is credit risk, market risk, operational risk. You know what is Basel I. Basel I talks about the minimum capital adequacy requirement. Basel II talks about three things, that is minimum capital requirement, the supervisory review process, and the internal assessment, and third one is the market discipline. You know what is Basel III. Basel III talks about the, of course, the minimum capital requirement, the capital conservation ratio, the extra 2.5% for India, and of course it talks about the globally, domestically systematically important banks and globally systematically important banks, which has to maintain some additional capital, depending on in which bucket it falls, bucket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is all about the capital adequacy ratio. I have the videos on Basel 1, Basel 2 and Basel 3 where I have explained how the credit risk is to be assessed, not credit risk, market risk, how it can be assessed, operational risk, how it can be assessed. Okay, thank you for watching this video. Please stay with me, please subscribe my channel, and I am coming with more such videos which are of interest, and I hope you will be with me and motivate me to bring more videos. Thank you.